Hi you guys, it's me Eugene, so welcome back to my channel. So probably add background music so it's not completely boring. And yeah, I hope today will be a good video. I'm doing a book review and I'll put this book review also on like what's it called? On Quora and Medium. So this is mostly I spent a lot of time for the summary. I read the book. I had read this book actually before, but this is the first time I'm taking notes on the book. And yeah, I have also little parts where I speak from my own experience and talking about my background a little bit, or things in current events about this book. That's how I make it a little bit into a book review. But I really think overall my satisfaction with reading this book is really good. I like what's her name? I like Agatha Christie, her way of speaking, her way of writing, and her way of describing the emotions of characters, the thoughts, and she has a good balance of dialogue and descriptions. And in my previous book review where I talked about the LGBTQ books, Call Me by Your Name, it was really heavy in the thoughts and feelings, which I said in the description box is a little bit too much of the thoughts, and we get it how Elio just doesn't know if Oliver really loves him or not, and Oliver too, actually in the book it's described how Oliver too is unsure if he really loves Elio, but of course it's not good. I don't condone having relations with a minor, because Elio's in the book it says he's 17 years old, so he's still not old enough to have consent for that kind of thing. But it's in the book, and the book became a movie, so it's what it is. But they do show how they grow up in the book, so there is of course the possibility that they could be together once he's 18, right? So anyway, that's something I wanted to address from the LGBT book. And of course I really love the the out of character book. I really like the out of character book. So this book is A Pocket Full of Rye by Agatha Christie. She's a really prolific writer. Only the Bible and Shakespeare have sold more copies than Agatha Christie. She's written a lot of mysteries. I think there's British shows about her books, the Hercule Poirot series and the Miss Marple series. So this book is the Miss Marple book. It was published in 1953. There's 239 pages. It was published by HarperCollins. Okay. In the beginning, as the premise, there were some typists. And then, yes, typing itself was an occupation back then, as it was a treasured and exotic skill. Miss Summers is described as an inefficient typist, and Miss Griffith is the head typist. Miss Grosvenor is the personal secretary of Mr. Rex Fortescue. He convulses and asks what was in the tea. Sir Edwin Sandman of Harley Street is a doctor, as is Dr. Isaacs of Bethnal Green. Doctors whom they seek out to determine the cause of death, which is typically a coroner's job, which they might be a coroner too. Inspector Neal says how Miss Griffith is not the type to poison, as she was not in love with him and has no mental illness and holds no grudges towards him. Miss Grosvenor is an easy suspect, but she denies any allegations. Taxine is a type of poison that can be found in berries, yew berries, or leaves. It was not cyanide or pure nicotine, because those kill instantly. There was also cereal in his right-hand pocket, or as it is more accurately described as rye. The Fortescues live in Baden Heath, where there are golf courses. There are actually golf courses in Montclair, Virginia, which is where I live and where I used to live. But on our mail, we can say Montclair or Dumfries, Virginia. It doesn't matter, but it's a little bit different. But it's kind of the same too for the mailing address, and when you type it in Google Maps. But anyway, where we live, but I don't want to say exactly where we live, but yeah. So golf is a very leisurely sport for white-collar folks. In Mr. Fortescue's first marriage, he had 2 sons and a daughter. That Mrs. Fortescue has been dead for a long time. His second wife is much younger than him. Miss Dove has no idea that he died when she is first questioned, but the butlers knew. Miss Griffith noticed something off about Mr. Fortescue, as he was shouting obscenities. Montesquieu is the typical surname, but Rex changed it to Fortescue. So he changed his last name, actually, and his whole family's last name. It was a different last name. It means, when I looked on Google, it means Fortescue means someone who is strong and valiant, according to houseofnames.com. Alicia Keys had a different last name at first too, Augello Cook, instead of Keys. Keys is like her stage name, and also Joe Hisashi, who made the Studio Ghibli music. Joe Hisashi he's the composer. Like his last name is actually not Hisaishi, or no, not Joe. I think maybe Joe is not his real name or something. Like Joe Hisashi, he has some name that's Americanized, I think, in his stage name too, just like Alicia Keys. I can add that right now. So then, let's see. Miss Grosvenor says he said nonsense. Rex, Mr. Fortescue said nonsense as well. Miss Dove is then interviewed by Inspector Neil. The food that was served for Mr. Fortescue consisted of bacon, scrambled eggs, coffee, toast, marmalade, and cold ham. Doesn't that sound delicious? But the cold ham was something that was eaten by everyone else yesterday too. There was no fish or sausages. There was no fish. Okay, and then you could, yeah. Okay, so he doesn't like cereal. He ate with his wife, daughter, and daughter-in-law. Miss Dove is well educated, but is still paid handsomely for domestic work. Adele was Mr. Fortescue's second wife. She married him for his money, apparently. Percival was terrified of his father, as it is described. His wife is Jennifer, who is trained as a nurse. She nursed him to health and beyond, physical health, emotional health, perhaps even sexual health, when he got pneumonia. Elaine liked a schoolmaster. Elaine is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Fortescue, the previous Mrs. Fortescue. Elaine liked a schoolmaster, but he had communistic ideas. Another son lives in East Africa and is estranged, Lance. He still is making some money as a junior partner in the firm. Gladys Martin is the waitress. Ellen Curtis is a housemaid of first-class proportion. Miss Ramsbottom, Mr. Fortescue's sister-in-law, is known colloquially and endearingly as Aunt Effie. Miss Dove is an orphan, and she took a secretarial course at St. Alfred's Secretarial College. She has worked for 3 different employers. She is a busy, buzzing bee who loves all the occupational flowers in the garden of society. Gladys brushed and pressed the suits. She never saw rye in his coat pocket. Rye is a form of grain prior to being processed. Mrs. Crump, as the chef, is bewildered at the fact that food poisoning is suspected. Of course, it was her. She's so guilty of murder. I'm sure some of you watch How to Get Away with Murder, that went from 2014 up to 2020, starring Viola Davis and several others. Noticing even the small details will serve you well, not only as a budding detective, but also as an artist, musician, a writer, a dancer, a doctor, and so much more. Lance Fortescue says he didn't forge the check. It could have been Percival behind that scheme, so there was some forged check. Adele Fortescue is in shock that her husband died. There is an inquest that is undertaken. Mr. Vivian Dubois left the presence of Adele and their dilemma after realizing the enormity of the situation. Their golf match had ended. There is a faint, sneaky smile on Adele's lips, even though her husband had just died. So that's so strange. Maybe she knows something the rest of us do not at this point in the novel. Murder is no laughing matter, but alas, many times the genres of comedy and tragedy overlap, intersect, and congeal. Ellen, the housemaid, says they just pretend to play golf when they just have pleasures all the time. So instead of playing golf, they probably just have pleasure all the time. That's what Ellen, the housemaid, says. Oh, how vain and stupendous, lol. It seems so sad how Mr. Fortescue's children and Mrs. Fortescue's stepchildren are caught in the midst of this debauchery and villainy. Miss Ramsbottom asks Inspector Neil if he is interested in missionary work. Miss Ramsbottom is not perturbed in the slightest at her brother's death. Elaine cries upon learning that her father died. She can marry Gerald now, but she did not want it to be like this. She got what she wanted, but so the idiom or adage that states, "Be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it," rings true for Elaine. It is then confirmed that Taxine is the means by which Mr. Fortescue died. Percival says his father's will, £100,000 to Mrs. Fortescue and £50,000 to Elaine, and pounds is the currency in Britain. If you want to calculate how much that's in your country's denomination of currency, it's £100,000 to Mrs. Fortescue and £50,000 to Elaine. Percival is already a partner in the firm, so he is getting money regardless of this circumstance. Percival's nickname is Val, and Patricia's nickname is Pat. Pat is Lance's wife. Lance reserves a spot for Pat at the Barnes Hotel. Pat wants to go see his family members, which are her in-laws. However, a poisoner is in their midst, so precautions must be taken to prevent further tragedies. Pat says, "Oh, what nonsense." Adele and Mr. Vivian Dubois talk via telephone. Mr. Dubois is agitated and panicky. He says to Adele that he burnt their letters, or another way is correspondence, their correspondence, right? He asks if Adele did the same with his letters that were addressed to her. She says that she did. So that's something that's, mentioned in the book, but the other characters don't know about it. So it's like a soliloquy in a play where some people in the play, they say something, but the other characters don't know. That's something that is said in the book, but the other characters don't know. Delicacies, so let me say, adding, and then delicacies are present at this point: 2 cakes and some biscuits, scones, and honey, alongside fresh black market farm butter. So when Agatha Christie describes actual food, it can be really appetizing, right? These nice, delicious desserts, and then before the breakfast items, she mentions really these details and things that we will just remember. It's good to have these little details too. Of course, it might seem insignificant to have these details, but every detail matters when you're a writer. It's good to build up the scenery and to build up the environment that you're building, the world that you're creating when you're a writer, right? Okay. So Miss Ramsbottom says how her husband, their grandfather, would be upset because of the police presence in their house. He was a strict Plymouth brother all his life. Gladys, as the parlor maid, was scared to tell the police and was all panicky. Miss Ramsbottom thought that strange. Gladys felt the police would not believe what she wanted to say. Lance ironically says this whole situation is like a detective story. If only he knew. Mr. Crump and Gladys take the day off, leaving the meal prep service to Mrs. Crump. It is technically Mr. Crump's time to have no work, but not Gladys's allotted time off. Mary Dove turns on the lights and sees Adele Fortescue dead with a half-eaten scone. Potassium cyanide, is in the tea. Then this is a pause where I want to just build your vocabulary skills. Okay, so three passages from this book where you have to know the vocab term. Okay, so Ellen says to the inspector, "All this pretending to play golf." I say golf. Okay. "All this pretending to play golf or tennis, and I have seen things with my own eyes in this house." The library door was open, and there they were, kissing and canoodling. What does canoodling mean based on the context? So canoodling means embracing, caressing, or kissing. So even in this, it's a murder mystery book, but they can have elements of romance even in the murder mystery. So that's why you have to understand the concept of intersectionality, where different genres can be in more than one book, but of course the majority of the book is based on the premise and the genre of a murder mystery, or a thriller, which is a synonym, mystery and thriller. But sometimes, it's a synonym, so that's hopefully a concept you can understand. She, Mary Dove, turned from the window and looked at herself in the full-length mirror that hung on the wall where the staircase turned. She saw a small, demure figure, with immaculate white collar and cuffs on a beige-gray dress. Her dark hair was parted in the middle and drawn back in two shining waves to a knot in the back of the neck. The lipstick she used was a pale rose color. Okay, that's on page 25. I put the page numbers, so I put all these page numbers, so when I do my Quora and Medium review. So, okay. What does immaculate mean? So immaculate means clean, spotless, or pristine. Okay, this is the last vocabulary one. So this is the context. Elaine and Gerald will soon be engaged. Elaine and Gerald will soon be engaged. Elaine is being interviewed by Inspector Neil, and she describes the marital possibility to him. So he, Inspector Neil, felt almost compunction as he saw the awkward gesture of the girl's hand and the flush on her face. What does compunction mean? Definition: a feeling of guilt, as he had said they might have an announcement soon, which prompted her to blush. So that's what he said previously, actually. So, okay. So then keep going. So Miss Marple makes an appearance in chapter 13 on page 99. She sees 3 newspaper headlines: triple murder at Yew Tree Lodge. Gladys Martin was killed. In addition to Adele and Rex, Miss Marple had trained Gladys in domestic service. Can you imagine having one of your students murdered by someone? Gladys was an orphan at St. Faith's. Her dead body had a close peg on her nose. Miss Marple was disgusted by that act of malice. Gladys wanted to be with men, at least with the prospect of having a husband eventually. This is why she chose domestic service instead of restaurant service. Restaurant service was not as glamorous for her. Some of my friends, Yachan and Yoshi, worked in the restaurant industry at Blue Ocean, which is a Japanese restaurant in Fairfax, very close to our old church. Back to this fictional story. So Gladys seemed to be in love with Albert Evans. Then Miss Marple says this is a wicked murderer, Inspector Neil, and the wicked should not go unpunished. So that's on page 107. So that's something she says. I think that's a really important quote that stood out to me. Cyanide is found in the gardener's shed. Gladys seems to have been choked by a stocking. Blackbird nursery rug fits in with this murder. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocketful of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king? The king was in his counting house, counting out his money. The queen was in the parlor, eating bread and honey. The maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. When there came a little dicky bird and ripped off her nose. So that's on page 113. And then only Rex Fortescue had marmalade. Only Rex Fortescue had marmalade. That's where the text scene was. Wait, let me drink some water. Mary Dove heard someone moving above where Adele was upstairs. She describes how last summer a gardener shot 4 blackbirds but hanged them by the fruit bushes. However, fell down. Okay. However, so crazy in my life. Okay, so however, someone took them off the line and put them on Rex's desk. That's what happened to the blackbirds that were killed. The inspector surmised correctly that Vivienne Dubois told Adele to destroy their correspondence, much like former President Trump did with classified government documents by shredding some of them and taking some of them to his resort, Mar-a-Lago in Florida, both actions being highly suspect. Adele was defensive towards Jennifer about making her will privately. Inspector Neil keeps asking everyone about the blackbirds. Lance says something about the blackbird mine. Miss Ramsbottom offers Miss Marple a room to stay in next door. Adele's money from Mr. Fortescue now belongs to Vivienne Dubois. Rex Fortescue put the firm in charge of the wills in a tight spot because of his bad investment tactics. Adele needed to live a month after Rex's death to inherit the money. This is common practice because of if a couple were to die on an airplane, then the inheritance would be a dilemma. So actually now they say that the money goes to the residuary legati, who is Mr. Percival Fortescue. Elaine wants to marry Gerald in a month's time. The money she'll inherit from her father may be used to start up a school in Cornwall. How lovely. Creating an educational center would be good for her to build up some good karma amidst all this bad karma in her family, not to mention to build up her credit karma. That's just some my review analysis, right? Mrs. Mackenzie's husband died of fever at the Blackbird mine many years ago. She is still bitter about it as a widow. So yeah, because Mrs. Mackenzie's husband, what's his name? Mr. Rex Fortescue, he didn't help him, and he was left alone, right? So Mrs. Mackenzie still blames Rex Fortescue, even though now Rex Fortescue is dead too, but Mrs. Mackenzie blames him because of the Blackbird mine. Her husband died of fever. So he was not he was just left to die, right? With the fever, so she's bitter about it. So that's another character that's now added into this book, to the plot. So Jennifer says how Elaine is not one to shop. She's a more outdoorsy person. And remember, Elaine is the daughter of Rex Fortescue. Jennifer is the daughter-in-law of Rex Fortescue. Jennifer's married to Percival. Jennifer's married to Percival Fortescue. So Jennifer goes on a rant about who could have been the murderer and expresses an interest in escaping this person. Miss Marple advises against that as the police will find her if she escapes. Don, her first husband, what's her name? Jennifer's first husband, died in a war as a fighter pilot. She married Freddie afterward, who was a gay man. He shot himself after a certain point in time. As stated in my previous book review, homosexuality was not as accepted back then, so it is understandable that Freddie felt the need to escape reality indefinitely. Let us do our best to seek out mental health treatments if necessary. I'm currently receiving therapy and there's no shame in that. However, I don't receive conversion therapy as that is totally inhumane and immoral. I have therapy appointments for my condition, which is schizophrenia, and specifically catatonic schizophrenia. My therapists have all been very helpful, understanding, and professional. Of course, it is unfortunate that many LGBTQ+ people have to go through conversion therapy in this country and abroad. This book, as I told you just now, Freddie, Jennifer marries Freddie, and he was gay. So even though this book is not an LGBTQ book, but it had a relationship, an LGBTQ relationship mentioned in this book. Of course, it's not a favorable light that LGBTQ are put in, because it's showing mental illness for LGBTQ people, which is not always a favorable light, but it is somewhat of a reality. It was a reality back then and still is about how mental illness affects LGBTQ people. Of course, if you're really handsome or something, or really attractive as an LGBT person, then you might be better off and you might not have these mental health issues as much, or if you just are lucky. Sometimes it's about luck too, but when you're just a teenager or something, or a young adult, it can be really hard to maintain a positive demeanor, a positive disposition, because it's really hard to just go through society with especially before the Supreme Court made the decision, right, to have gay marriage allowed, right? And lots of gay people and LGBT people have been getting married, and they've either been adopting children or doing or having children with because they had children with a previous straight relationship, or they do surrogacy or some kind of in vitro fertilization, right? Which can be really expensive. Which surrogacy and all those in vitro fertilization, gestational surrogacy, is all that, and even adoption, all those things are really expensive. So that's my opinion, is that all of being LGBTQ is actually a little bit more. It's more expensive than being straight and being heterosexual and cisgender. And being cisgender is actually more expensive to be gay. So it's kind of sad, but it's just, of course, you have to pay a lot. Of course, insurance, if you have good insurance, if you have good health insurance, then you can afford these things maybe more easily. But even still, you're going to have to save a lot of money to have children, especially if you're LGBTQ, you have to save a lot more money. And of course, you need a wedding and first save for a house. But having children, like the surrogacy is really expensive. So it can be over like $50,000, over $100,000 to have children. Whereas just a straight relationship, like having the hospital bills would usually be a lot less if you're just a straight person, but you have to pay the surrogate usually in America. But in Canada, they have what's it called? Altruistic surrogacy. In Canada, so they have altruistic surrogate, which means you don't have to pay the surrogate to carry the baby. As usually in America, you have to pay the surrogate who's going to carry the baby. Because a different woman's, like if you're two gay men, then a different woman's egg, a different woman's egg is put in another woman who's the surrogate, and then one of the gay people in the couple, one of their sperm is put with the woman. So, and it's like somehow they do some scientific thing. I don't know. I'm not an expert on the matter. That's just what I know. But and you have to pay a lot of money for like the surrogacy agency and the clinic. You have to pay the clinic, the surrogate, the surrogacy agency. It's a lot of money. Unless you do altruistic service. So that's just something where Jennifer, who's Rex Fortescue, the person who died in this book, Jennifer is Rex Fortescue's what's it called? Daughter, right? And so daughter-in-law, she's Rex Fortescue's daughter-in-law. And after being with Freddie, Jennifer's been with Percival ever since. Inspector Neil says to Percival that his father might have had GPI, or general paralysis of the insane, which caused megalomania and irritability. They realized that Gladys was killed before Adele. Like, I didn't laugh before, but like, yeah, they used the word Adele. Like, Adele is the name that's not just now the Adele singer, right, that I've played music of, but Adele is a name before the Adele that we all know, right? So it was a name before that time, I guess. I don't know how far back the name Adele goes, because I'm not like an entomologist or like an etymologist, whatever. Etymology is like the study of names, and like I'm not in that field, so I don't think that field is like you can make a lot of money studying people's names or something. But maybe like, of course, like you can make money as in a geneticist. If you're a geneticist, you study the genes, and like if you study like Ancestry.com and 23andMe, if you study all those things, you can make a lot of money, right? But like, and just okay. So Adele, they realized that Gladys was killed before Adele, so it doesn't quite fit the nursery rhyme. She had no coat, despite it being cold. It was also not the typical time of day to hang the clothes, as it was in the evening. Right, so we're almost done. Percival had the most to gain, but he wasn't there. Jennifer feels life is too boring as a housewife. She used to work as a nurse in the wards. She says how she regrets marrying Val. Miss Marple discerns that it was Gladys who killed Rex. So did you see that coming? This is the spoiler alert. Okay, this is about the book, the main part of the book. But it was accidental and conspiratorial because she was told to do so by someone else. She thought she was giving Rex a truth drug of some sort. Her lover, Albert, told her to do it. Let's be careful, all of you. All of you young people, like seriously, you need to be careful. Like, don't be fooled by looks and charms. Someone wants to tell you to kill someone, don't listen to what they say, okay? Okay, so this is in the murder mystery book. So Lance is Albert Evans. So Lance is actually Albert Evans. So he's the one that's in charge. He told Gladys to kill Rex Fortescue, and then Lance, he killed the other people, Adele and who's the other one? Killed Adele and Gladys. So Gladys killed Rex, but Lance killed Gladys and Adele. So he is the killer. Jennifer is Ruby Mackenzie, but she did not commit the murder. Mary Dove asked Ruby for money to stay silent about her being Ruby in actuality instead of the Jennifer alias that she had been using up until that point in time. Mary Dove returns the money though with a check at the request of Inspector Neil. And of course, it's not like Jennifer Aniston, but you can of course make comparisons. I feel like literature, you can make comparisons to anything. Just try to you want to make sure you explain yourself when you compare things in literature. Of course, people say you shouldn't compare people to other people, but like in literature and like certain things you study, like you need to make comparisons and analogies and like, you know, current events, just whatever you want to talk about. Like that's something you can do and build your skills, right? So Gladys's letter to Miss Marple is in the final 2 pages of the book. She says how she is so fond of the man Lance, who is obviously cheating on Pat/Patricia. Patricia must heed the advice of Miss Marple in going back to Ireland. Pat should have trusted her gut instead of going to East Africa with Lane. She was thinking of going back to Ireland after Freddie died, but she never did. Gladys's letter contained a photograph, which was taken unbeknownst to Lance, and it is a photo of her and Lance together. So that proves, because she thought Lance was Albert Evans, right? She thought Lance was Albert Evans, so it was actually Lance. She felt, and Gladys sent this letter to Miss Marple out of desperation. So you can add that. This is letter to Miss Marple out of desperation upon learning that the police arrived and the inspector was about this voice. So upon learning that the police arrived, so her letter contained a photo of her and Lance together, which he was known as, what's his name? Albert Evans, and then she fell in love with a married man who was also a sociopath. Okay, so I think that's good for this. Okay, so if you guys think that was just like, I had some vocabulary, some summaries, and some of my interpretations. I think this book was really like, overall my feeling is that I love Agatha Christie's writing. She's very like to the point, and also she can be really descriptive. She used lots of big vocabulary words, so I think the words she used, her lexicon, her vernacular, everything is like spot on, and it's really helpful. Like as someone who wants, if you want to improve your writing, I think Agatha Christie's books are really great. Of course, this was published like in the 1950s, but I think they like re-copyrighted it or something to make it so that, because like usually with library books, like if it's over 50 years old, it's like out of publication and they're not going to publish it anymore. But because Agatha Christie is such a well-known author, they're like republishing her books, and like that's why it's like I think 2013 again. Like I can see like I think it's like in the 2000s or 2010s, somewhere in the decade of 2010s, 2013 maybe, like it's been republished by HarperCollins. So I think HarperCollins republished this. So it was originally published in 1953, but usually that's how it is with library books. And I recommend like getting library books if you can. Otherwise, you have to buy your own books, but then you're gonna run out of space, and like you shouldn't. I recommend like being a hoarder, because if you're a hoarder, then you just have too much stuff, and then you're gonna have to sell some things eventually if you just have too much stuff and it's collecting dust. And yeah, like also like the chairman of the Washington Times, what's his name? Is the chairman? I forget his name, but like we went to his house and we helped because he had lots of books too. Like my church we meet at the Washington Times because the Washington Times was founded by Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. So we meet at our church there at the Washington Times in DC. But like one of the sub-regional director's wife, Mrs. Patton she's also sub-regional director, and we're just at the chairman of the Washington Times, his house, and his apartment, and like we cleaned the dust, or like we cleaned up, wiped everything, and then organized the books in categories. So he has lots of books. And I think he donated a lot of the books now, I think he probably already by now. It was a while ago we did that, and like I think he donated lots of his books to places, or maybe sold some of them, donated. So yeah, like it's good to be well read and try to keep reading. And I think his name is Mr. McDivitt. So Mr. McDivitt is the chairman of the Washington Times, so we helped with his books. Yeah, this is just one type of genre. I want to do these like once in a while, not all the time, but yeah, like I'm not in the book club because I was, as you know, like in a different video I mentioned, like in the book club, like I was in the murder mystery book club. We didn't read Agatha Christie. We read lots of new releases. We read more new releases that were in the library and a little bit more recent books than this one, from different authors. And like I have my book review on my Medium page, and it's also on my core page about well, on Medium I put all the compilations of various posts from Quora. I put into one post about different books I've read, murder mysteries, but I want to this can just be one book. I think that's enough. It's like, yeah, but I think, yeah, just murder mysteries are good, and like it's just one type of genre, and like I like romance too, so I might read more of those, I think, because I like LGBTQ romance, but also like I could read other romance. And then what else, like I like, of course I wrote like the nonfiction book I mentioned already lots of times, but yeah. And then this I can do, I have another Agatha Christie book. The other one I have is a lot long. It's like 100 pages longer. This book was like 230 pages around. The other book that I have is like 330. So I'll try to read that also when I have time. So yeah, it's just, yeah. So I'm also gonna post soon, like what's it called? Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I already have the music downloaded. I had the audio, my piano where I made the music. So yeah, I hope you guys can subscribe to my channel. Like I usually don't say that, but like, you know, YouTubers, when they say like you want to increase your subscriber count, you should say always to subscribe to your channel, and then hopefully that'll you know, like knock some sense into people, the viewers, to know like, oh, you should actually click the button to subscribe, because that does really help. And like I want to be on the good side of the algorithm of YouTube. Like it's really hard, but I don't know. But and also it's kind of weird, like I want to mention like because I use some dating apps, and it's not like inappropriate or anything, but of course some people can be inappropriate. But like, yeah, just I wanted, like I changed my, like on Instagram I have a new photo because I went to with my Aunt Joy and our family. My Aunt Joy's visiting, and from my dad's side of the family, and like, we went to Shenandoah National Park, and then I took a nice profile picture, and then like I uploaded that picture to like Grindr, and then like I realized, because you can see how many people have seen your profile, and like before I was like getting only like a few people looking at my profile, but now like dozens of people have been looking at my profile because of my new profile picture, where like I don't have my glasses, because I think maybe like some people think glasses are not sexy or something. I don't know, like not like appealing when you wear glasses, but like I took off my glasses and then I took a picture at the park, Shenandoah National Park, and then I put it on Grindr, just my face, and like a lot of people I think like how I look without glasses, but of course I don't wear contacts. I don't want to pay for contacts, and I don't know how it works. Like I don't want to like poke my eye or whatever. And but yeah, so that's just some side notes I wanted to say. So okay, thanks you guys. I hope this is enjoyable and like really educational, and like that's what I want my channel to be. And also like I bought recently tarot cards, so I'm gonna do some tarot videos because I know those are really popular on YouTube too. So like I'm not like certified to do tarot or whatever, but like I can learn about the astrological signs, because I like that, and then I can also research about the cards themselves that I'm getting soon. Tomorrow I think I'm gonna get tarot cards. So I'm gonna research about the tarot cards that I have, and so I can, you know, create ways of like making it interesting to speak, because I speak good English, right? I majored in English, so I know like what I'm talking about, right? So I can use lots of synonyms for words and different situational, and I study rhetoric. So rhetoric is like, you know, a lot of situational theories, right? And also I just want to try to like enlighten and illuminate your lives, and try to bring some happiness into your lives through like what I talk about. And like, and this video has been like almost 40 minutes, so like I can do these kinds of long videos, but I don't want to do too long like for these tarot readings. I'll try to keep it more simplified, but like I can choose different groups, and like I have a candle, so I can put the candle. I don't know how to do like the aerial view, but like I'll figure it out. I'm not gonna do that, but I can just like show the card, and then like I can talk about the tarot readings. I want to do it like, I feel like, you know, my initials, like I said in like one of my videos, like anyway, as you can tell, like my initials are ESP, so extrasensory perception is what ESP stands for. So I really believe in the power of like extrasensory perception. And also like ironically, like even though I said in my LGBT video that I don't validate like JK Rowling because she's like transphobic, even though she's successful as an author, but many of the actors and actresses in Harry Potter have denounced J.K. Rowling too. So even the actors and actresses that you so lovingly have watched, right? We all love those movies, but like those actors and actresses have denounced J.K. Rowling, but because she's doing the turf propaganda also. And of course, we have to pray for Ukraine and during this time in Russia. Also, that's another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit. I'm not an expert on the matter, but just we need to do our best to make sure we stand with our democratic allies during this time. And yeah, what else? Yeah, so like with J.K. Rowling, like the thing I wanted to say is like if you look here, maybe you can't see it, but like if you look at my photo on Instagram, you can see like I have a scar on my forehead. My mom said like when I was a young child, like I bumped my head into IKEA furniture, so I bumped my head, so it wasn't like Voldemort who hit me in the forehead, but it is like a line. It's a line right here on my forehead. It's not like a lightning bolt, but it's a line that I have. It's a scar that I have on my forehead, and you know I wear glasses, and it's similar because also like what's his name? Like Harry Potter, of course I don't condone Harry Potter because it's not good to do that, and like also what I said in my the Disney movie, the Pocahontas, where I did the colors of the wind, like Disney, based on a source from Instagram, where Matt XIV, I think it's his source. He's a famous influencer, and he mentioned how Disney has been like just completely like rainbow washing. Like they sell LGBT merchandise, but then they donate it to the sponsors and co-sponsors of the Don't Say Gay bill, which is really devastating for transgender people in Florida and also for teachers. It restricts what teachers can teach, and also it makes it difficult for transgender people. Like, and it's saying like how people who have transgender children, it's saying their parents are abusers. It's saying their parents, even though the transgender children willingly wanted to get transgender surgery, and it's good, like it's gender affirming surgery. If they want to do it, they should be able to do it, right? And lots of doctors with high education are giving these people their gender affirming surgeries. And then anyway, but that's in Florida. Hopefully it doesn't like spread elsewhere, but anyway, so like that's something, right? And then also just like yeah, so I hope this book was interesting, more mystery. Hope it can give you some spice in your life, and of course we don't like want actual murders in our own lives. That's not what I hope for. We all need to be confident and not complacent, but like confident and satisfied like with where we are, and not try to like we shouldn't try to harm ourselves, and we shouldn't try to harm other people. Okay, thanks you guys.